Okay. Okay, it's been about an hour and a half since I made the last video. I'm showing you my frying pan right here. I have a big flat frying pan and I have the 4 tablespoons of baking soda in there. Even though I am dividing the recipe in half, I am going to still do the 4 tablespoons of baking soda and 4 cups of water, because that is, you'll see later, we're going to submerge the pretzels in there. So regardless of whether you have a full batch of pretzels or a half batch of pretzels, they still need to go in the water, and we need it at the same spot. So there's my baking soda. I just have a quart mason jar here filled with water. So that's about 4 cups. A quart is 4 cups, and I just spilled half of it on the stovetop. So I add that to there, and I'm going to bring that to a boil while I do the next step. Now I'm looking right now, it seems a little low, so I might add a little more water in a minute, because I want it to be, it's a big pan and I want it to be a little bit more full when I am boiling them in the water. So I'll show you that later. Okay, so I started the baking soda water boiling. I have my dough here. You can see it sort of rose a little bit while I was out for my walk with Fig. It's been about an hour and a half. I think I said that already. So now this dough, oh, it's glorious. I wish you guys could feel it, because it's like, I don't want to toot my own horn, but it's pretty perfect. Okay, a little bit of flour on my countertop. And I'm just going to knead it a little bit more, knock out some of the air that's in there, make it smooth and stretchy again. All right, so there's my ball of dough. The next thing your recipe is going to tell you to do is to shape the pretzels. And so I want to read it right off the recipe for you so that you can understand what it's telling you to do. Now, you can make these any shape you wanted. Some people just do pretzel bites. When we do them at school, it's a lot faster, but I want to show you how to actually make the pretzel. So you're going to break off a piece of dough, about golf ball size, I think it tells you. Yep. And we're going to roll this out into a rope. It says about 14 inches long, but that's not probably going to happen. So you roll it out this way, or you could roll it on your countertop. The countertop, sometimes it's a little harder to do, but you get a little more stretch in it. This way I just let gravity do the work. All right, so here's my pretzel dough. Oh gosh, don't look, there's a hair. All right, so here's my pretzel rope that I'm gonna make, or dough rope that I'm gonna make into a pretzel. So the recipe tells you to make a U shape. Can you see this? Do I have to move over? Here. Make a U shape, right? And then it tells you to cross one end of the rope over the other. So I just crossed one end. And it tells you to do one more flip. Twist them one more time, and then you're gonna fold it down. And you pinch it, and then you have this lovely little pretzel. So you do that over and over with your dough, and then these are going to go in that water that I started boiling with the baking soda. When you submerge them in there for 30 seconds, the baking soda kind of makes the outside get that chewy texture that you want. It helps with the color when they bake. And yeah, it just adds like another layer to your pretzel. So the water's coming up to a boil. I'm going to finish shaping these. The other thing I'm going to do is get a cookie sheet ready, because once they go into the boiling water, they're going to go onto the cookie sheet. I'll probably put parchment down just because I prefer that for cleanup, but you could just grease your pan. The recipe tells you to, I should do another one while I'm talking. The recipe tells you to put salt down on the pan, and that's only if you want salty pretzels. If you want your pretzels to be sweet, then you just bake them plain. Don't put anything on them. And when they come out of the oven, we'll brush them in butter, and you can sprinkle a cinnamon sugar mixture on top of them. I do not recommend you put the cinnamon sugar on them before they go in the oven, because we bake them at 475, and that's too hot of a temperature for cinnamon. It will burn it, and you'll get like a sour sort of bitter taste to your cinnamon, which is not ideal. So I always just tell everyone to make them plain, and then you can put the cinnamon sugar on when they come out later. So I'm going to finish making my pretzels. I'll take you over by the water. I'll show you that step, and then we will move on. Okay, so you can see my water starting to boil. I have my salt here that I'm going to put on my pretzels. So I don't like them the sweet kind. I'm greasing my parchment. It shouldn't stick to the parchment, but just in case, I have it there greased to get it off. Now the recipe tells you to salt this, and then when the pretzels come out and they're wet, you put them on the sheet and the salt will stick to the pretzel. I prefer just to sprinkle a salt on top when they come out because that will, it'll stick on the top and then you see it when you're eating them and everything. So the pretzels go in for 30 seconds. Like I said, this is going to give it like a chewy outside and sort of a golden brown color. So you want to make sure the pretzel is covered with the water and it's going to sit in there for 30 seconds. I added a little more water to my pan so it's a little bit deeper. And what I'm going to do, I'm doing one right now just to show you, but what I'm going to do when I do the rest will be put a bunch in at once because that's why you get this big pan. It makes the process go faster. So, but I'm just doing this one on its own to show you. I also nudged it a little bit so it's not touching the bottom of the pan. You don't want it to like cook to the bottom of the pan. I'm also going to flip it over partway through because it's sort of floating a little bit. Careful for the hot water. I just want to make sure that baking soda water gets on both sides. And I'm going to flip it back over so I can move it to my pan. So that was about 30 seconds. I'm using this nice big fish spatula because it helps the water drain and it won't wreck the pretzels when I take them out. So then I just put a little salt on top. And then I'm going to do all of the pretzels, put them all in one pan, and they're going to go in the oven at 475 for, I think it's at 8 minutes. I'll double check it, but that's how this next step goes. Okay, so my pretzels are out of the oven. I'll take a picture so you can see them up closer. But let's see if I can, well, I don't know, they're gonna be hot. Ooh, they're so yummy. Ooh, ooh. So you can see they're nice and golden brown. They have some cracks in them, and that's good. And they're light and fluffy. So I did about 8 minutes in the oven. I put them close to the top of the oven because I wanted them to get brown and the heat gets hottest up there. Now 475 is also super hot. The hottest your oven will go is 500, and so when you're baking at this hot temperature, you have to, it's usually not going to be for a very long time and you should pay attention to what's going on. The other thing I wanted to point out, I had my parchment paper touching the top of the oven where the broiler is. Now the broiler wasn't turned on, but it got hot because the oven was so hot and I got this burn mark in my paper. And I want to warn you, the parchment paper can start on fire if it's touching those heat elements in the oven. So be careful when you put parchment in. Try not to have too much hanging over the edges. Sometimes I get a little overconfident in my parchment papering abilities, but just be careful about where you're putting it and if it's touching the other things. You can also see that some of the paper is actually quite brown on the edges. So that happens at those hot of temperatures. So be careful with parchment paper in the oven. Now, I just wanted to talk for 1 second about what you could dip these in. I have a stick of butter here. If you wanted, you could melt some of this in the microwave and brush them with butter right now. And that would be really delicious. I'm actually going to freeze a bunch of these, and later on when I eat them, after I heat them up, I'll probably put the butter on then when I eat them. The other thing we do at school is we just rip a little bit of the paper off, and then we just take the butter and rub it all around when they come out of the oven and they're still hot. And the butter will melt right on there, but it's a good way to waste a chunk of butter, so you might not want to do that at home. The other thing I have out is some of my other things you could dip in. I have yellow mustard, I have Dijon mustard, and I have stone ground mustard. I love mustard, and so I'm going to put my pretzels in mustard. The other thing you could do, it would be like a honey mustard. So some mayonnaise, some mustard, and some honey all mixed together, and you can make a honey mustard dip. My sister makes a honey mustard dip that, it's not honey, it's just the mustard and the mayonnaise, and then she puts brown sugar in it for the sweetness. So if you don't have honey at home, you could always use something like that. Now, if you did sweet ones, right now what you would do, because there would be no salt on them, is brush them with the melted butter or put butter on them that melts, and then have a cinnamon sugar mixture already made, and then just sprinkle that on top of them. You could also make for those sweet ones like a cream cheese icing or like powdered sugar glaze. So cream cheese icing would just be cream cheese and some powdered sugar. You mix it together with a hand mixer because cream cheese is kind of chunky, and I would also have taken that out like when I started making the pretzels so that the cream cheese could come to room temperature. And you mix that together with a little powdered sugar and vanilla, and then I use milk, just a little splash at a time to kind of thin it out to the consistency you want. There's a lot of recipes online for cream cheese icing. You could find one of those as well. And then a powdered sugar glaze would just be powdered sugar and milk mixed together, and that would be real runny, but it would be like a drizzle you could put on top of them if you wanted it a little bit sweeter or some more sweetness to them. So those are my tips for pretzels, and there they are again. Aren't they glorious? Can I zoom in like this? Nope, not this way. So there you go. I hope you're having a great day. It was great to see you. Just kidding, I didn't see you. You just saw me. All right, bye.